The mountain has always called to me, though I never quite understood why. Long before I became a monk, before I even knew the meaning of silence, I would hear it in my dreams, the slow, breathing rhythm of the earth itself, rising and falling beneath the endless sky. It was as if something ancient and alive was whispering through the wind, asking me to listen, to remember now as I walk through the misted path at dawn, my sandals brushing against the wet earth. I finally understand. The mountain was never calling me outward. It was calling me inward. The air is cool, carrying the scent of pine and moss. Somewhere far below, a stream hums softly like a distant prayer. The world feels still, suspended between night and day. And I walk slowly each step, a small bow to the sacred ground beneath my feet. My robe is damp with dew, but I do not mind. The chill of the morning reminds me that I am alive, and being alive is already a miracle I too often forget in this silence. Thoughts begin to fade like footprints washed away by rain. The mind wants to speak, it always does, but the mountain listens so deeply that my words lose meaning before they can form. There was a time when silence frightened me. When I lived in the village, surrounded by noise and chatter, silence felt like a void, a loneliness I could not bear. I thought peace meant filling the world with sound of my laughter, my opinions, my plans for the future. But now I realize peace is not in sound. It is in listening. As I climb higher, the mist grows denser. I can no longer see the path clearly, but I can feel it. The stones beneath my feet are smooth from the passage of countless pilgrims before me. I imagine their prayers, their hopes, their fears, each one leaving an invisible trace in the air. Perhaps that is why the mountain feels alive. It carries every whisper ever spoken to it. A bird calls out from a nearby tree, its voice sharp and sudden against the hush. I pause, letting the sound echo through me. It reminds me of something my old teacher once said: when the bird sings, do not hear the bird. Hear the silence that holds its song. I breathe in deeply, and the fog moves with me, curling around my body like smoke. There's a strange comfort in not seeing too far ahead. It teaches me to trust the step I'm taking now. When I reach a small clearing, I sit down on a flat rock. The wind moves gently through the valley, brushing against my face. It feels like the touch of an unseen hand, neither warm nor cold, simply there. I close my eyes. For a long time, nothing happens. I sit, and the mountain breathes. My thoughts try to wander. Memories of my childhood, regrets of things said and unsaid, faces that appear like ripples on water. But I do not chase them. I let them rise and fall, like clouds drifting across the mind's sky. Then, something shifts. A soft murmur moves through the air, so faint that I can't tell if it's real or imagined. It sounds like a voice, hold, tender, and patient. I cannot understand the words, but I feel their meaning deep inside me. It says, "All things come and go. You are neither the cloud nor the sky. You are the space through which both pass." The words flow through me like water through sand. I breathe again, slower this time. The tension in my chest begins to dissolve. Every exhale feels like letting go of something heavy I've carried for too long, for a while. I simply sit there, breathing. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of wet stone and cedar. I can hear the faint drip of melting snow from the cliffs above. Every sound, every breath, every heartbeat merges into one vast rhythm, the rhythm of life itself. I open my eyes and look around. The mist is thinning now, revealing the outlines of the distant peaks. They rise like sleeping giants, their heads lost in clouds. A ray of sunlight touches the highest point, painting it gold. It's strange how light always finds a way through, even when everything seems covered in shadow. I remember how lost I once was, chasing meaning in the noise of the world, searching for something outside myself. Yet, the mountain has no temples, no idols, no signs. It teaches through presence alone. It asks nothing, demands nothing, yet reveals everything. A small butterfly lands on my knee. Its wings tremble slightly, almost translucent in a morning light. I watch it, careful not to move. In that fragile stillness, I realize how easily I have overlooked such quiet miracles all my life. Maybe enlightenment is not a sudden burst of light or a divine revelation. Maybe it's simply this seeing the world as it truly is, without wanting to change it. I stay there for what feels like hours. Time softens, stretches, disappears. When I finally rise to my feet, my body feels lighter, my steps slower. I bow deeply to the mountain before continuing upward. The path turns narrow and steep. My breath grows heavier, but it no longer feels like a struggle. Each inhale feels like receiving the mountain. Each exhale feels like giving myself back to it. After some time, I reach a point where the clouds part, and for the first time, I can see the valley below reverse, glistening like threads of silver. Trees swaying like gentle prayers. I can even see the faint smoke of distant villages. The sight fills me with an odd tenderness. So much life, so many hearts beating, all believing themselves separate. Yet, from here, everything looks connected, woven together by the same invisible breath. I sit again, and a thought arises not as a distraction, but as a gift. The mountain does not climb itself, yet it stands tall. The river does not push itself, yet it flows endlessly. Why then must I struggle to become what I already am? I smile faintly. For the first time in years, I feel no need to search. I lay back on the ground, feeling the earth beneath me firm, steady, eternal. The clouds drift slowly above, and I let my mind drift with them. Somewhere nearby, the wind hums a low tune, almost like chanting. My eyelids grow heavy. I am not asleep, not awake, just suspended in that sacred space between worlds. The mountain whispers again, not with words, but with presence. It tells me that I have never been alone, that even in silence, I am surrounded by infinite life. The sun climbs higher, painting the mist in shades of silver and gold. I feel warmth spread across my skin, seeping into my bones. In that warmth, something opens inside me, a deep, quiet gratitude. Gratitude for the breath that fills me, for the stillness that holds me, for the mountain that teaches without speaking. As I prepare to continue my journey, I realize that the mountain's whisper will follow me wherever I go, because the true mountain, the one that breathes and watches and loves, was never outside me. It was within all along. I smile as I begin to walk again. Each step is slower now, softer. The world feels weightless, like a dream I don't want to wake from. The wind brushes past, carrying that same ancient murmur. The voice of the world, itself timeless, patient, full of peace, and as I walk deeper into its embrace, I realize that I am not walking toward enlightenment. I am walking with it. After leaving the mountain's mist behind, I followed a narrow trail that curved downward toward the sound of running water. The path was strewn with small pebbles that crunched softly beneath my feet. The scent of wet earth filled the air, and every breath carried with it the cool freshness of dawn, slowly dissolving into morning. I could hear it before I saw. It's the river. Its voice was alive and fluid, whispering secrets as it wound through the valley. It did not rush, nor did it resist. It simply flowed, eternal and untroubled. When I reached its edge, I stopped. The sight before me was simple yet profound. The river glimmered like liquid glass, reflecting the pale blue of the sky. Pebbles beneath the water shimmered like small worlds, each one unique, each one still. I sat on a large stone near the bank and closed my eyes. The sound of the current wrapped around me, soft and rhythmic, like the pulse of a sleeping giant. For a while, I only listened. There was a certain wisdom in its sound, something I couldn't explain, only feel. The river seemed to be speaking in a language beyond words, one that only the heart could understand. It reminded me of something my teacher once said. Before I left the monastery, water does not try to be water. It does not strive to become the sea. It simply flows, and in flowing, it becomes everything. At that time, I did not truly understand his words. I thought he meant that I should be patient. But now, sitting by the river, I realize he was pointing towards something far deeper. The river doesn't choose its path. The stones may block it, the branches may fall into it, yet it never fights back. It simply moves around them, accepting everything, resisting nothing. How different that is from the way I used to live in the past. I fought against every obstacle, every disappointment, every failure. I believed that peace was something to conquer, something I could win if I just tried hard enough. But the more I tried, the more restless I became. Now I see that peace is not found by fighting the current. It is found by surrendering to it. I reached out and dipped my fingers into the water. It was cool, almost cold, but alive. The current wrapped around my skin gently, then slipped away. The water that passed through my fingers would never return, and yet the river never disappeared. It remained whole, even as every drop within it changed. I thought of all the people I had known, the friends I lost, the family I left behind, the faces that once filled my days. None of them remained the same, and neither did I. We were all part of some greater flow, moving, changing, dissolving, and beginning again. The thought was not sad. It was freeing. A breeze swept through the valley, carrying with it the faint fragrance of wildflowers. The trees along the riverbank swayed gently, their leaves shimmering like tiny mirrors of light. Everything seemed to breathe in unison: the water, the wind, the trees, even the stones. I lay back on the soft grass and watched the clouds drift slowly across the sky. Each one moved freely, changing shape as it went. None of them clung to what they had been. None resisted what they were becoming. The river's song blended with the whisper of wind through the reeds. Together, they sounded like a lullaby for the earth itself. After a while, I decided to walk along the river's edge. Its course wound through the valley like a silver serpent, sometimes wide and calm, sometimes narrow and swift. Each turn revealed a new reflection of the world trees bending toward their mirrored selves, birds swooping low to touch their shadows, dragonflies gliding just above the surface. The river seemed to teach without words, to guide without effort. At one point, I came across a fallen tree lying halfway across the stream. The water split around it effortlessly, one part moving left, the other right, before merging again beyond the obstruction. I stopped and stared. How many times had I let my own heart be divided like that, fighting against things I could have simply flowed around. The river had no fear of losing itself, even when divided. It knew it would always come back together. I crouched beside it and whispered softly, "Teach me to flow as you do." Of course, the river did not answer. Yet, somehow, I felt it understood. A drop of water splashed against my hand, as if in response, and I smiled. The day wore on, and the sun climbed higher. The light scattered across the surface of the water, turning it to gold. I felt the warmth seep into my skin, grounding me in the present moment. Every breath felt like the world breathing with me. For a time, I simply walked in silence. My thoughts came and went like ripples, touching the surface of awareness, but never disturbing its depth. At one bend of the river, I found a small village. The people there were humble, tending to their gardens, drying herbs, mending nets. A few children were playing near the water, their laughter clear and bright. They looked at me curiously as I passed, their eyes full of innocent wonder. One of them asked, "Where are you going, monk?" I smiled and replied, "Where the river goes." The child laughed, but an old woman who was washing clothes nearby looked up and nodded, as if she understood. She said quietly, "Then you'll never be lost." Her words stayed with me long after I left the village behind. By afternoon, I reached a wider part of the river where the current slowed and deepened. Here, the water was so still that it perfectly reflected the sky above. It was hard to tell where the water ended and the heavens began. I sat again, closing my eyes, listening. The steady rhythm of the current was like a mantra. My breath aligned with it until there was no distinction between the two. Thoughts still came memories, worries, small flickers of desire, but they no longer troubled me. Each one arose and dissolved on its own, just like ripples fading into stillness. Somewhere deep within that silence, a realization surfaced, clear and simple. Peace does not come when the river stops flowing. Peace comes when you stop resisting its flow. The words were not mine. They came from a place beyond thought, a whisper carried by the current itself. Tears filled my eyes, not of sadness, but of release. How long had I carried the weight of trying to control life, to shape it according to my will? And how often had that effort led me away from peace? I reached again into the water and let it wash over my palms. This time, I didn't just feel its coolness, I felt its freedom. The river had no past and no future. It was entirely present. Every drop was both beginning and ending at once. And so, I sat there, allowing myself to be like the river flowing, accepting, free. The light began to change as the sun tilted westward. The air grew softer, warmer, and the valley glowed with a golden hue. Birds returned to their nests, and the water caught the color of fire and sky. I watched the reflection of clouds shifting on the surface and realized that even though the river mirrored everything, it remained untouched by what it reflected. That, I thought, is true wisdom, to be part of the world, but not bound by it. I closed my eyes again and let the murmur of the river carry me inward. Each sound felt like a step deeper into stillness. I no longer knew where the world ended and I began. The flow outside and the flow within were the same dots as dusk approached. The first stars appeared faintly above the horizon. Their light trembled upon the water's surface, and I felt a profound calm settle over me. I whispered softly, not to the river, but to myself. I do not need to rush. I do not need to fight. I only need to flow. The river answered with its eternal song, a sound that had existed long before me and would continue long after. When I finally lay down beside it, the ground felt warm, the breeze tender. The world around me seemed to exhale, as if it too was ready to rest. I closed my eyes, listening to the water's endless lullaby, and as sleep began to draw me in, I felt as though I had become part of the current itself, moving, breathing, dreaming, flowing endlessly toward a peace that asked for nothing but surrender. The river faded behind me as the path led deeper into the forest. The sound of rushing water softened into a faint hum, and soon even that disappeared, replaced by the gentle rhythm of my own footsteps. The air grew still, thick with the scent of cedar and damp leaves. The forest was quiet in a way that felt alive, as if every tree, every blade of grass was listening. I walked slowly, without hurry, letting the silence unfold like an old memory I had forgotten to remember. The light was dim here, filtered through countless layers of leaves. Shafts of sunlight pierced the canopy in golden streaks, painting the moss-covered ground in shifting patterns. Each step felt like entering a deeper layer of stillness. After some time, I came upon a clearing. A single ray of light fell upon a smooth stone in the center, surrounded by a ring of ferns. It seemed as though the forest itself had built a small shrine here, a secret temple, untouched by human hands. I sat upon the stone, crossed my legs, and closed my eyes. The forest exhaled, and I exhaled with it. At first, there was only the usual chatter of my mind, faint thoughts circling like restless birds. They came uninvited, fragments of the past, faces I hadn't seen in years, words I once said and wished I could take back. Each thought pulled at me gently. trying to lure me back into old patterns of worry and desire. I noticed them, but I did not follow. I simply let them drift by dot. Then another thought came, softer but sharper. Somehow, who am I when all these thoughts are gone? The question echoed inside me like a pebble dropped into still water. Ripples spread through my awareness. The mind immediately began searching for answers, memories of my name, my life as a monk, the teachings I had studied, the faces of my teachers. But all of these felt like clothes I had been wearing for so long that I'd forgotten the skin beneath them. The forest seemed to lean closer. Listening, I tried to still the mind. But the more I tried, the more it resisted. It whispered, "You are this, you are that. You are the voice speaking. You are the one who listens." Even that voice was not constant. It shifted, changed, disappeared. I opened my eyes. A small bird had landed on a nearby branch, its tiny chest rising and falling. For a moment, I felt an inexplicable connection, as though the same breath that moved through it was also moving through me. The forest, the bird, the breeze, my body, all were breathing together. When the bird flew away, the silence that followed felt even deeper. I closed my eyes again and let my awareness sink further inward. Beneath the noise of thought, beneath the pulse of the body, there was something vast and unmoving, a quiet so profound it felt infinite. It wasn't empty. It was full, alive, radiant. But as soon as I noticed it, my mind stirred again. "This is peace," it said. "This is what you have been seeking." And instantly, the stillness vanished. It struck me how easily the mind takes ownership of everything, even silence, even peace. It wants to turn every experience into mine. But silence cannot belong to anyone. The moment you try to hold it, it slips away like mist through your fingers. I sat there for a long time, watching this play between the mind and the silence. One moment I would sink into stillness. The next, I'd be pulled back into thought. It was like watching waves rise and fall upon the surface of a vast ocean. Slowly, I began to realize that I was not the waves. I was the ocean itself. That realization did not come as a thought, but as a feeling, a deep, steady knowing that needed no words. The wind shifted. Somewhere far above, a few leaves began to fall, spiraling down slowly. One landed near me, its golden edge brushing against my knee. I picked it up and studied it. The veins ran through it like tiny rivers, delicate yet strong. For a moment, I thought of the mountain, the river, and now the forest, all parts of the same great body of life. each teaching me a different language of peace. I placed the leaf in my lap and breathed. The silence deepened. Then something unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, an old memory rose, one I hadn't visited in years. I was a boy again, standing by my father's side as he worked in the fields. The sun was high, the air thick with heat. My father's voice was calm but distant as he said, "Son, learn to listen to the land. It speaks without words." And sometimes, at night, when the moonlight touched the mountains and the sound of the river filled the valley, I would sit again by that same bridge. I'd close my eyes, breathe in the still air, and whisper, "Thank you," because I had come to understand that every pain, every question, every shadow I once feared all were part of the lantern's glow, teaching me to see. The lantern had not just shown me the way, had transformed me into light itself. The night was long, but not in darkness. It was filled with a quiet radiance, as if every star above had whispered something sacred into the soul of the earth. I had not slept. Instead, I sat by the temple's garden pond, watching the reflection of the moon tremble upon the water's surface. The faint echo of temple bells in the distance pulsed through the cool air like a heartbeat, slow and eternal. For the first time in my life, I did not long for anything. I did not crave enlightenment, peace, or answers. I simply sat, and in that stillness, existence unfolded itself like a blossom opening before dawn. I could feel the pulse of the universe, not as something beyond me, but within me, flowing through every breath, every grain of air, every soft ripple upon the pond. A gentle breeze stirred the trees. The leaves whispered a song that felt older than time itself. I remembered what the old monk had once told me, that dawn was not a time of day, but a moment of awakening that arrives only when the soul remembers itself. I did not yet understand what it meant, but something inside me stirred, a subtle awareness like the faint light before sunrise, touching the edges of my being. As I gazed at the horizon, I noticed the first hint of color breaking the deep blue of night. It was not bright, not sudden, just a slow exhale of gold and silver merging softly with the sky. It was then that I realized the world never truly sleeps. It only shifts between shades of light. I could feel my body and spirit doing the same, no longer divided, but flowing together like the merging of night and day. The silence grew deeper, yet it was not empty. It was full, overflowing with a presence I could not name. My thoughts began to dissolve, one by one, like clouds melting into the sky. There was no fear, no doubt, no boundary between where I ended and the universe began. I was the wind passing through the pines, the ripples on the pond, the soft hum of awakening life. Then, somewhere within that boundless stillness, I felt a voice. It was not heard with ears, but with the heart, a gentle resonance that spoke without words. It said, "The sun does not rise to light the world. It rises to remind you that the light was never gone." The meaning struck deep. How long had I searched for something that was always within me? I had wandered through mountains, rivers, and silence, not to find truth, but to remember it. Enlightenment was never about reaching some distant peak. It was about seeing that every moment, even the most ordinary, sacred. The sun slowly began to rise, spilling liquid gold across the horizon. The temple roof gleamed, the air shimmered, and the pond glowed like molten amber. I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun touch my face. It wasn't just light I felt, it was understanding. It was forgiveness. It was love in its purest, most formless form. Memories came to me, all the struggles, the questions, the nights of restlessness, the tears shed in solitude. But they did not bring pain. They were like petals floating gently down a river, each one a part of the journey that brought me here. Every mistake, every sorrow had been a step toward awakening. There was no longer anything to regret, because even my darkness had been a kind of light dot as the day brightened. I rose and walked to the edge of the mountain path. Below, the valley glowed in morning mist, and far beyond, villages stirred awake. I could hear laughter, the faint clang of pots, a child calling to a mother, life itself awakening in all its forms. For the first time, I saw no separation between myself and them. We were all threads of the same tapestry, woven by unseen hands. I took a deep breath and whispered, "I am home." The monk appeared quietly beside me, as if he had always been there. He said nothing at first, simply stood watching the sunrise. After a while, he spoke softly, "You have seen the eternal dawn. Is this enlightenment?" He smiled. "If you must name it, call it remembering. The dawn was never lost, only your eyes were closed. When you open them again, the world is reborn through you." His words melted into the air like incense smoke. I felt no need to ask more. There were no more teachings to chase, no more questions to solve. I bowed deeply, not in reverence to him, but to everything: the mountains, the rivers, the wind, the silence. All of them had been my teachers. Days turned into weeks, and I continued living among the monks. Yet everything had changed. I swept the courtyard each morning, watching sunlight shimmer on the dust I brushed away. I prepared rice, cleaned lanterns, and tended to the garden, but every action was now an act of prayer. Even breathing felt sacred. At times, I would walk alone to the same bridge where I had once sat with my fears. Now, the river did not reflect my confusion, but my calm. I would release small petals into the water, watching them float away, whispering blessings for all beings, for those who still wandered in darkness, and for those who had found their light. The seasons passed gently. One morning, I awoke before sunrise and stepped outside the temple. Mist rolled softly through the valley, and the first star still lingered above the fading night. I realized then that the eternal dawn is not about beginnings or endings. It is the constant rebirth of awareness, happening in every breath we take. The sun rose once more, golden and infinite. Its light touched everything: the grass, the stones, the faces of people I would never meet, and I felt tears on my cheeks, not from sadness, but from a love too vast to contain, and in that sacred stillness, a realization unfolded. There is no end to awakening. There is no final truth to possess. The dawn never truly ends. It simply continues to rise within those who dare to see. I stood there for a long time, breathing with the rhythm of the world. The sky expanded above, and I felt my heart expanding with it, boundless, luminous, eternal. I no longer sought peace. I was peace. I no longer looked for the light. I was the light. And as the morning breeze carried the scent of earth and pine through the valley, I knew the journey was never about reaching enlightenment. It was about realizing that we had been the dawn all along. When I first arrived at the temple, I carried with me the noise of the world. It hummed in my chest, restless and loud, like an old bell that refused to stop ringing. My thoughts were crowded, my heart uneasy. And though I had come seeking peace, I did not know what peace truly meant. The master greeted me with a smile that seemed to hold centuries of silence. He said nothing for a long moment, only looked at me as if listening to something beyond sound. Then, softly, he said, "Sit by the pond at dawn. Listen, but do not try to hear. Breathe, but do not try to breathe." At that time, I did not understand. I thought peace was something to be achieved, silence something to be forced. That first morning, I sat beside the pond as the mist curled like breath over the still water. The frogs had stopped croaking. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and pine. I tried to still my thoughts, but they swirled faster. Memories, plans, questions, fears like fish darting beneath the surface of my mind. I remember clenching my fists, trying to command the mind to stop thinking. But the harder I tried, the louder everything became. The sound of my heartbeat filled my ears. The wind in the bamboos sounded like whispers of judgment. Even the gentle trickle of water from the pond's edge felt sharp against the quiet I was supposed to find. I grew frustrated. I wanted silence, but silence would not come. That was when the old monk appeared, walking slowly, his sandals soft against the dirt path. He sat beside me without a word. For a while, we both just breathed. Then he said, almost as if talking to himself, "Do not fight the noise. Let it pass through you, like wind through reeds. Stillness is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of resistance." I did not respond, but those words lingered long after he had gone. That night, when I lay in my small wooden room, I listened to the crickets outside, to the soft creak of the temple beams. I realized that the world was never silent. It was I who was too full of resistance to hear the quiet hidden within the noise. Days passed, and I followed the master's simple instruction: sit, breathe, listen. Sometimes I sat by the pond. Sometimes I walked among the trees. Sometimes I just watched the flame of a candle until the wax melted into itself. Slowly, something began to shift. My thoughts still came, but I stopped chasing them. I let them rise and fall like waves, each one fading on its own. The tension in my body began to soften. My breath no longer felt forced. The temple's quiet started to seep into me, not as an external hush, but as something blooming from within. One evening, after a day of sweeping leaves and fetching water from the well, I sat again by the pond. The sun had dipped behind the mountains, leaving the sky painted in muted gold and soft blue. The world seemed to be holding its breath. A dragonfly hovered near the water's surface, its wings catching the last bit of light. I felt no need to move, no desire to think. I simply watched, and in that watching, I began to feel something I had never felt before: a deep, wordless calm that seemed to stretch beyond myself, as though the pond, the dragonfly, the fading sky, and I were part of the same breath. Then, from that stillness, I heard something, not a sound, exactly, but a whisper. It was the kind of whisper that can only be heard when everything else has quieted, when the heart itself begins to listen. It said nothing in words, yet it spoke volumes. It felt like a memory I had forgotten, the remembrance of peace that was never lost, only hidden beneath layers of thought. My eyes filled with tears, though I did not feel sadness. It was more like relief, the soft release of all the years I had been holding on too tightly. The master approached me quietly and stood behind me. I didn't turn. I could feel his presence like the warmth of the setting sun. He said, "Now you are hearing it, the whisper of stillness. It was always there, waiting for you to stop searching." That night, I could not sleep, not because I was restless, but because I was so profoundly still. The sound of the night insects no longer felt like distractions. The wind in the trees was no longer separate from my breath. Every sound became a thread woven into the vast fabric of silence. I realized then that silence is not something fragile that can be broken. It is the ground upon which all sound rests. In the days that followed, my life in the temple became a gentle rhythm. Morning meditation by the pond, sweeping the courtyard, preparing tea for the elders, evening prayers by candlelight. Each action, however small, became a doorway into presence. I noticed how the broom's bristles made soft music against the stone floor, how the steam from the tea rose like incense into the morning light. Every moment became alive with awareness. Sometimes, new students arrived at the temple, restless, hurried, their eyes full of questions, just as mine once were. They asked me how long it took to find peace. I would smile, remembering my own impatience, and say, peace was never lost. It only waited for me to stop running. On one particularly quiet morning, I walked to the forest beyond the temple grounds. The fog was thick, wrapping the trees in silver. Every step I took made the dew-soaked leaves sigh beneath my feet. I stopped near an old cedar tree and placed my hand on its bark. It felt alive, warm in its stillness. For the first time, I felt the world breathe with me, the trees inhaling when I inhaled, the earth exhaling when I exhaled. I realized I was no longer separate from what I sought. I was not listening to the stillness. I was listening as the stillness itself. Later that day, the master told me a story. Once, he said, a monk sought silence. He traveled to the highest mountains, far from all human sound. But even there, he heard the wind, the river, his own heartbeat. He grew angry and shouted at the heavens, "Why can I not find silence?" The mountain echoed back his cry, and then, when he stopped shouting, he heard it, the silence that had never left. True stillness, my child, is not found in quiet places. It is found when the heart stops arguing with the present moment. That evening, while lighting candles in the main hall, I watched the small flames flicker in unison, their gentle light dancing against the stone walls. I could feel the quiet pulsing in the air, not an emptiness, but a fullness beyond measure. I whispered a silent prayer of gratitude, not to any deity, but to the simple gift of being alive, aware, and at peace. In the following weeks, the noise within me, the endless chatter of doubt, memory, and desire began to fade. Sometimes it returned, like ripples after a stone is dropped into a pond. But even then, I no longer tried to make them disappear. I learned to watch them with kindness, knowing that every ripple eventually returns to still water. One night, while sitting in meditation, I felt as if I dissolved into the air around me. My body grew light, my breath slow, and I sensed the same whisper again, the whisper of stillness. But this time, it was not something I heard. It was something I became. I realized that the voice I had sought outside was my own inner essence, quietly calling me home all along. The temple bells rang in the distance, their deep tones merging with the night wind. I opened my eyes and saw the stars reflected in the pond, thousands of tiny worlds shimmering in the darkness. I smiled, understanding at last that silence was not the absence of life, but the presence of eternity itself. From that night onward, I stopped seeking. I stopped trying to reach some imagined peace. Instead, I began to live as the peace I had found. I moved slowly, spoke softly, and listened deeply, not only to people, but to the spaces between their words, the pauses that carry meaning beyond speech. Now, when I sit by the pond at dawn, I do not wait for silence. I know it is already here. The wind moves, the water ripples, the birds sing, and all of it is silence in motion. I breathe in, and the world breathes with me. I breathe out, and stillness whispers through everything. That whisper has no end. It flows through every moment, through every breath, through the quiet unfolding of life itself. And if you ever stop long enough to listen, truly listen, you will hear it to the whisper that was never gone. The stillness that was always within you, waiting patiently for your return. The days after my first awakening passed like drifting clouds. I no longer measured time by the sun or the ringing of the temple bell. Each moment felt round and complete, as if life itself had stopped moving, yet continued to breathe. And yet, even within that peace, the Master said something that stirred me deeply. He told me, stillness without movement becomes stone. Learn from the river, only it knows how to flow and remain itself. Those words lingered in me. I thought I understood stillness, but I had not yet learned flow. My peace, though real, was fragile, easily shaken when the world changed its tone. When a fellow monk grew angry, or when unexpected rain ruined a day's work, I could feel my calm tremble like a candle in wind. It was then that the Master sent me to the valley below the temple, where an old river curved through fields of golden grass. Go, he said, and live by the river until you understand why the stone does not resent the water that wears it away. So I went. The path down from the mountain was long and winding, and the air grew warmer as I descended. I carried only a mat, a bowl, and a small wooden flute that the Master had given me long ago, but which I had never played. When I reached the riverbank, it was near sunset. The water shimmered bronze under the fading light. I could hear its endless murmur, not loud, not soft, but constant, like the breathing of the world. I built a small shelter of bamboo and leaves near the edge, just enough to sleep under. That first night, I listened to the river for hours. It sounded alive, moving without effort, singing without intent. I thought of how tirelessly it flowed, day and night, through drought and storm, never clinging to any shape, never fighting against its own direction. Yet, when I dipped my hand into it, I could feel its power, gentle but unstoppable. In the morning, I walked along the river's edge. The stones beneath my feet were smooth, their roughness worn away by centuries of patient touch. I picked one up and held it in my palm. It was small, round, cool. I wondered how long it had taken for the river to shape it this way. How many years of water and time had flowed over it before it surrendered its edges and became one with the flow. As I sat there, the river seemed to speak, not with words, but with its rhythm. It said, "Do not resist what is passing. I move because I let go. The stone endures because it allows me to shape it." I watched as twigs floated by, some spinning wildly, others gliding smoothly, all carried forward by the same current. I realized then that I had been trying to control my peace, holding it tightly like a fragile possession, when in truth, peace could not be held. It had to move through me like this river, ungrasped and unbroken. That day, I began to sit on the same rock each morning, facing the river. I would watch the light dance on its surface, shifting from silver to gold to deep blue as the hours passed. The more I observed, the more I began to understand that everything, even stillness, has motion hidden within it. The river flowed before me, yet within me, too, carving its quiet channels through the landscape of my mind. Sometimes the wind would rise, and the river would grow rough. The surface would shatter into waves, and the reflection of the sky would disappear. At first, I felt uneasy, as if the river's agitation were my own. But after some time, I noticed that beneath the turbulence, the deep water remained calm, always flowing in the same direction. The surface could rage and swirl, but the depth stayed untouched. That night, I could not sleep. I sat outside, wrapped in a thin blanket, listening to the night river. The moon hung low, and its lights scattered in the moving water like fragments of a broken mirror. I found myself whispering to the river as if it were a teacher. How do you stay so constant when everything around you changes? The river answered, not in words, but in the silence between ripples. I felt that the answer was simple. It did not try to stay constant. It simply was. Days turned into weeks. I began to live as the river did, eating when hungry, sleeping when tired, working when work appeared. Sometimes villagers would come to the river to wash clothes or fetch water. They would greet me kindly, a stranger who sat and watched. One old woman once asked me, "What do you see in that river every day?" I smiled and said, "Myself, learning to flow." She laughed softly and nodded as if she understood more than I did. One afternoon, after heavy rain, the river swelled. It roared louder than I had ever heard, muddy and fierce. I feared it would sweep away the banks, my shelter, even me. I stood watching as branches and debris rushed past. In my heart, I felt panic rise, the kind I had not felt since before I came to the temple. I wanted to run, to find higher ground, but something within whispered, "Stay." So I stood in the rain, drenched, trembling, and I watched. The river tore at the earth, yes, but it also carried away what no longer belonged. The dead leaves, the fallen branches, the broken things. And as I watched, I understood that even destruction had purpose in the river's flow. It was not cruelty, it was cleansing. The river made space for new life by letting go of what had served its time. When the storm passed, I walked along the river again. The water had calmed, but the banks were changed. My small shelter was gone, swept away like a leaf. I felt a brief sadness, then a strange peace. I realized the river had taught me a lesson my mind could never have explained. Everything we build, even the things we love, must one day return to the current. The more tightly we cling, the more painful the release. I rebuilt my shelter, smaller this time, simpler. I no longer tried to protect it from the elements. I let it be part of the world's rhythm, knowing it too would someday dissolve. In that acceptance, I felt lighter than ever before. One evening, while sitting by the water, I picked up my flute for the first time. I did not know how to play, but I pressed it to my lips and breathed. The sound was uneven, trembling, but the river seemed to answer. The air between us filled with a strange harmony, my uncertain notes blending with the river's eternal song. I laughed softly, realizing that even imperfection could flow beautifully when it did not resist itself. As days grew into months, I began to understand the Master's words. The stone and the river were not opposites. They were partners in an endless dance. The stone gave the river its song, shaping its movement, while the river gave the stone its smoothness, teaching its surrender. Neither sought to conquer the other. Both simply fulfilled their nature. One morning, as dawn broke over the valley, I saw a heron standing still in the shallow water. For a long time, it did not move. Its reflection rippled slightly, yet it remained utterly poised. Then, in a single motion, it dipped its beak and caught a fish. I realized that its stillness was not rigidity, it was awareness in motion. The heron was one with the river, and the river moved through it that night. As I lay beside the water, I thought of my own life. How many times had I resisted change, tried to cling to things that were meant to pass? People, moments, even feelings. I had been like the stone before it learned to yield. Now, I could feel that yielding within me, gentle but complete. The old self, the one who fought against the current, had begun to dissolve like sand in water. Months later, when the master came to visit, he found me sitting where the river curved most gracefully. He stood behind me for a while before speaking. "You have grown quieter," he said. "But tell me, what have you learned?" I smiled and looked at the water. I learned that stillness is not standing still. It is moving without resistance. The river taught me that. The master nodded, and the stone. I held up a small, smooth pebble I had kept since the first day. It taught me patience, that transformation takes time, and that surrender is not weakness. The stone is softer now, but stronger too. He smiled and placed his hand on my shoulder. "Then you are ready to return." Before leaving, I sat one last time by the river. I closed my eyes and listened. Its voice was the same as the day I arrived, yet different because I was different. The sound no longer flowed past me. It flowed through me. Every ripple seemed to whisper, "Go and carry this within you." When I climbed the mountain path back to the temple, I could still hear the river behind me, faint but unending. In the quiet of my steps, I felt its rhythm echo in my breath. I realized that the river never truly stayed behind. It now lived inside me, a current of acceptance, patience, and flow. And whenever life later brought storms or changes, I would close my eyes and remember the river's song, the way it embraced both the gentle and the fierce, the calm and the wild. I would remind myself that peace is not found by avoiding the currents, but by learning to move with them. The master was right. The stone does not resent the water that shapes it. It becomes beautiful because of it, and so do we. The valley had taught me the rhythm of life, the patience of the stone, and the flow of the river. Yet something still stirred within me, a quiet, persistent shadow of longing that whispered, "There is more to see." The master noticed it in my eyes during morning meditation, though he said nothing. One evening, he handed me a small, unadorned lantern carved of thin bronze and told me to carry it with me wherever I went. "Do not light it to see the world," he said. "Light it to see yourself." I stared at the lantern, puzzled. It was simple, almost fragile, yet its weight in my hand felt strange, not heavy, but substantial, as if it carried something invisible inside. That night, I placed it beside my sleeping mat, feeling its presence as I lay beneath the temple roof. The moonlight spilled through the window, brushing the floor with silver, but I could not sleep. My thoughts stirred, restless again, and I realized that I had been seeking illumination outside, in rivers, in stones, in distant teachings. Yet, I had never turned the light inward at dawn. I took the lantern to the edge of the courtyard. The air was crisp, and dew hung in the grass like tiny prisms. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and imagined a flame inside the lantern. At first, it was small, flickering timidly, uncertain of its own brightness. I watched it in silence, feeling it shimmer not outward, but inward, as if the light belonged to me and me alone. I realized that all my previous seeking of stillness, of flow, of peace had been preparing me for this, to discover the light that had always been within. Days passed, and I practiced this meditation each morning and night. I would sit with a lantern, unlit, eyes closed, and envision a flame glowing gently in its center. Sometimes it burned steady and bright. Other times it flickered and dimmed. Like my own mind, sometimes clear, sometimes clouded. I learned to watch without judgment, to feel without control, to simply allow the flame to exist as it wished. I discovered that the lantern's light was not a distraction from the world, but a mirror of my own inner clarity. One evening, the master walked beside me as I carried the lantern down the stone path to the pond. The water reflected the moon and stars, but my eyes were drawn to the lantern's imagined glow. He did not speak for a long while. Then he said, "Do you feel it?" I nodded. "It is not the lantern that shines," he continued, "but the one who holds it. The flame is within, waiting for acknowledgement. Only when you see it inside yourself will it illuminate everything around you." I pondered his words as I knelt by the water's edge. The reflection of the lantern shimmered on the surface, merging with the reflection of the moon. I realized then that the light within me was not separate from the world. It was the same radiance that made the stars glimmer, that caused the river to sparkle, that gave warmth to the stones. All I had to do was recognize it. Some nights, I would awaken before the temple bell, when the courtyard was still cloaked in darkness. I would light the lantern, imagining its flame flickering softly. Its glow seemed to stretch through the room, brushing against the walls, the roof beams. I felt as if I were carrying a piece of the dawn in my hands, and in that gentle illumination, I could see the subtle movements of my own heart, the unspoken thoughts, the quiet desires, the deep currents of fear and hope. One particularly quiet night, I was startled by a gust of wind that rattled the windows and swirled the papers on the altar. I thought my lantern's flame would be extinguished, yet it remained steady in my mind's eye. I realized then that this inner light was not subject to the wind or the storm. It could flicker, but it could not be destroyed. I understood for the first time that this flame was my own awareness, my consciousness, the steady witness of all my experiences. I began to notice it in ordinary moments as well. When the morning mist rolled over the temple steps, I felt the lantern's light within me, gentle and guiding. When a fellow monk laughed, or when the wind rustled through the bamboo grove, I sensed the same illumination radiating quietly, unobtrusively. The lantern taught me that light was not about brilliance or attention, but about presence, the quiet acknowledgement of everything as it truly is. One afternoon, while sitting in meditation beneath an ancient cedar, I opened my eyes and saw the sun filtering through the branches. The light created a mosaic of gold and green on the forest floor. In that moment, I felt the lantern inside me ignite fully, a luminous thread connecting the sunlight, the trees, the air, and my own heart. I realized that the inner lantern was not a tool, not a symbol, but a living companion. It had been with me all along, waiting for the time when I was ready to see it and carry it consciously. The Master sometimes watched me from a distance, never intervening, always letting the flame grow at its own pace. One evening, he said, "The inner lantern is a mirror. When you look at it, you see yourself. When you nurture it, you nurture everything. When you lose it, you lose nothing, for it is never gone." I reflected on these words and understood that the lantern was not something to hold, but something to be. It was awareness itself, steady, patient, resilient, quietly shining even in the darkest hours. I began carrying it with me through the temple grounds. When I swept the courtyard, I felt its light guiding my hands. When I drew water from the well, I imagined its warmth flowing into my fingertips. Even during prayer and ritual, the lantern's glow seemed to fill the spaces between each breath, each movement, each word unspoken. I had found a companion that did not speak, did not demand, but simply existed, always, faithfully, brilliantly. As the seasons changed, the lantern's light adapted with me. In the bright sun, it seemed hidden, almost invisible. In the misty mornings or the long winter nights, it glowed stronger than ever, casting soft clarity into my mind. I discovered that the inner lantern was not a flame that burned outward. It was a flame that radiated from the heart, illuminating thought, feeling, and perception with gentle awareness. There were times when I feared I had lost it, moments of despair, confusion, or exhaustion. But each time I returned to my breath, to stillness, to the simple act of envisioning the flame, it returned. It never judged, never faltered, never demanded perfection. It simply waited, shining quietly within. A light that required nothing but acknowledgement. One evening, I sat by the river where I had learned about flow and patience. The lantern, unlit in my hand, seemed to pulse softly, as if aware of the current beside me. I closed my eyes and imagined it burning steadily, sending warmth through my chest, through my limbs, through the very air around me. I could feel the river's flow, the stone's patience, and now the lantern's light weaving together inside me. The three lessons merged, not as separate teachings, but as a single, harmonious presence. I realized that the inner lantern was more than a guide. It was a witness to all that I had experienced, all that I had resisted, all that I had embraced. It had observed my fear, my frustration, my longing, my delight, and it had endured, untouched, unwavering. In its light, I saw my own continuity, the unbroken thread of awareness that remained even as the world shifted. Even as I changed, the temple became brighter in a way I had never noticed before. Not because the walls reflected more light, but because I carried the lantern everywhere, in the courtyard, along the hallways, in the quiet corners, in the shadowed rooms. Every step became illuminated from within. I no longer sought guidance outside, for the inner flame was enough. It could light the path when darkness fell. It could steady me when storms came. It could remind me that I was never truly alone. One night, as the moon hung low over the temple, I sat in meditation and felt the lantern's glow expand beyond my body, beyond the room, beyond the courtyard. It reached the stars above, the mountains beyond, the river far below. In that moment, I knew the lantern was not mine alone. It was the essence of all light, all awareness, all being, and yet it was mine, always, silently, patiently, brilliantly, waiting for me to notice. From that day on, I carried it with me, in thought, in breath, in every action. I had learned that light is not something that can be found outside, nor can it be stolen or given. It simply is, and when we acknowledge it, when we honor it, it illuminates everything: our mind, our heart, our world, and the spaces in between. The inner lantern taught me the art of seeing. It taught me that even in darkness, there is light. Even in chaos, there is guidance. Even in silence, there is presence. It was a teacher, a companion, and a mirror. And through it, I discovered the simplest, deepest truth, that the light I had been seeking everywhere else had been within me all along. After I discovered the inner lantern, I believed I had found all the guidance I would ever need. Yet, as the seasons shifted and the wind carried leaves from one branch to another, I began to notice something I had not before: the garden behind the temple. It was small, humble, yet bursting with life, and somehow seemed to hold a quiet truth that the river and the lantern had only hinted at. The master noticed my fascination and one afternoon said, Go into the garden. Do not seek to change it. Do not judge it. Learn from it, and you will learn from yourself. I stepped into the garden that evening, the air warm and thick with the scent of earth and flowers. The sun was low, casting long shadows, and the leaves rustled with a soft sigh. I had often walked past this garden, sweeping paths, collecting herbs, or watering its plants, but I had never truly seen it. Now, as I entered, I felt as though it was waiting for me, its silence more profound than any I had known. I knelt beside a small patch of soil and noticed the fallen leaves scattered across the ground. Some were brown and brittle, others still clinging to hints of green. I touched one and felt its fragility. The way life had once been vibrant and now returned to the earth. The garden seemed to whisper to me, though no voice spoke. I understood slowly that it was not about tending the plants, watering the flowers, or pulling weeds. It was about noticing, accepting, and letting go. Each leaf, each fallen petal, each wilting branch was a lesson in impermanence. I had held on to so many things in my life: memories, regrets, desires, fears, and I realized that my mind was crowded like the garden before me, with the leaves of what I could not release that night. I stayed in the garden under the soft glow of the lantern I carried. I let the cool soil press against my palms and the scent of the earth fill my senses. I closed my eyes and imagined the burdens I carried as leaves in my hand. One by one, I placed them on the ground, releasing them to the garden. Some I crumbled in my fingers before letting them fall. Others I set gently, watching the wind begin to carry them across the soil. I felt a lightness I had never known, as if a part of me that I had clung to so tightly had melted into the air. Morning brought a gentle rain. I watched the water bead on petals, wash away dust from the leaves, and nourish the roots beneath the soil. I realized that the garden did not judge what it received. It simply allowed the rain to fall, the water to sink, and life to continue. The process was both gentle and relentless, and I saw the same rhythm in my own life. There were losses, mistakes, endings, and yet there was growth and renewal in their wake. The garden was a teacher in patience and surrender, showing me that letting go is not about giving up, but about allowing life to flow naturally, without grasping or resisting. I spent days in that garden, walking slowly among the plants, kneeling beside the soil and tending what I could, though always with a sense of gentle detachment. I noticed how the roots dug deep into the earth, holding firmly yet flexible, bending with the wind. The flowers opened and closed, not striving to bloom perfectly, yet doing so with effortless grace. I realized that life itself was a cycle of holding and releasing, and that my own heart needed the same rhythm. I had been holding on to moments, memories, and fears as though they were necessary to keep my identity intact. But the garden showed me that identity is not fixed. That growth requires release. One afternoon, I encountered a dying tree at the edge of the garden. Its branches were brittle, its leaves pale and fragile. I felt a pang of sorrow, remembering how I used to resist endings, how I mourned even the smallest losses. I knelt before it and placed my hand on the rough bark. I did not try to save it. I did not pray for it to remain. I simply acknowledged it, feeling the warmth of life that had once been vibrant and now existed in another form. I understood then that letting go is not absence, but transformation. By releasing my attachment, I allowed space for the new, and in that space, life could continue. Evenings became my favorite time in the garden. I carried my lantern along the stone path and walked slowly, feeling the soft glow of its light mingling with the fading sunlight. Shadows stretched long and folded across the garden, creating patterns that seemed alive. I noticed the insects settling, the birds returning to nests, the scent of damp earth rising as the temperature cooled. I realized that every evening was a gentle reminder that endings are not to be feared. They are necessary, natural, and beautiful in their own quiet way. Sometimes, the master would join me in the garden without a word. We would walk together among the flowers and trees, silently observing the rhythm of life. I watched him kneel beside a patch of moss, noticing the smallest dewdrops clinging to its surface. I saw how fully present he was, yet unpossessive, allowing the garden to exist without judgment or interference. I learned to emulate that presence, to observe without trying to control, to embrace without clinging. One morning, a strong wind swept through the valley. Leaves flew in every direction, petals scattered, and branches swayed violently. I stood in the garden, feeling the wind batter against me, my hair tangled, my robes soaked. At first, a part of me resisted, fearing the destruction, fearing the loss of order I had grown accustomed to. Then I remembered the river, the stone, and the inner lantern. I inhaled deeply and let the wind pass through me. I imagined myself as part of the garden, flexible, yielding, resilient. The leaves would fall, the branches would bend, and I would remain steady, not clinging, not resisting. In that surrender, I felt a profound liberation. The wind no longer threatened me. It became a companion, a reminder of impermanence and motion. I began to notice the beauty in what was lost, the way the scattered leaves created new patterns on the soil, the way the bending branches allowed sunlight to reach hidden roots. The garden was alive with transformation, and I, too, was alive with it over time. I came to see that the garden was a reflection of my own mind. Each leaf represented a thought, each flower a feeling, each branch a memory. When I tried to hold them too tightly, they wilted, lost their essence, or became burdensome. When I allowed them to be, to fall, to flow, they nourished the soil of my consciousness, making space for growth and renewal. The act of letting go was not loss, but liberation. And the garden whispered this truth endlessly. I began to integrate this practice into every aspect of my life. When difficult emotions arose, I imagined placing them gently on the soil of the garden. When attachments threatened to weigh me down, I pictured releasing them to the wind. Even my relationships and ambitions were held lightly, appreciated for what they were in the present moment, and then allowed to change, transform, or fade without resistance. One evening, I sat beneath the tallest tree in the garden, the lantern flickering softly at my side. I closed my eyes and felt the rhythm of the earth beneath me, the breeze on my skin, the pulse of life flowing through every root, leaf, and branch. I understood deeply that the garden was not simply a place outside me. It was inside me, in every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of conscious awareness. To tend it, to witness it, to release into it, this was the path of peace. From that day forward, I walked through life with the lessons of the garden etched into my being. I no longer feared change, loss, or endings. I no longer clung to what could not remain. I had learned to move with the wind, to release with grace, to nurture without attachment. The garden had become my teacher, my mirror, my sanctuary. It showed me that in letting go, we find freedom. In release, we find peace. In acceptance, we find the quiet radiance of life itself. And as I lay beneath the stars each night, the lantern beside me and the garden around me, I felt a gentle truth settle into my heart, that letting go is not an act of surrender to absence, but an embrace of the endless cycle of transformation, and that in this embrace, the soul finds its true home. After months of quiet reflection, after rivers and stones, lanterns and gardens, I began to understand that the journey I had been walking was not a path towards something distant, but a gradual awakening to the life already present in each moment. Stillness, flow, illumination, each reinforcing the other, each necessary for the whole. Yet, as I meditated beneath the early morning sky one day, a subtle yearning arose within me. It was not longing for more knowledge or more practice, but a delicate curiosity, a soft whisper from deep within. What is beyond this moment? What is the eternal light that dawns before all awareness? I rose before the sun, carrying my lantern, even though the sky was already brightening. Its flame seemed almost shy in the growing light, flickering as if it too felt the subtle transition. I walked toward the temple's highest terrace, where the mountains met the horizon. There, the valley stretched below, rivers winding like silver threads. The garden and the courtyard, small in the vastness of the world. I inhaled deeply, feeling the cold, crisp air fill my lungs, and exhaled slowly, feeling it ripple through every fiber of my being. For the first time, I understood the sense of infinite presence, the eternal now that lies beyond the grasp of thought. The Master appeared silently beside me, as he often did, his presence unassuming yet profoundly grounding. "You have learned much," he said softly, "but there is one more lesson." I turned to him, heart open, ready to receive, though I did not know what form it would take. He gestured toward the horizon. "Look closely. See the dawn, not as a passing moment, but as a continuous presence. It does not rise and fall. It is eternal. Every sunrise, every breath, every flicker of awareness is a reflection of this eternal dawn." I stared at the mountains as the first rays of sunlight pierced the mist. The sky blushed with pale gold and soft pinks, and the valleys below were bathed in gentle, awakening light. And yet, even in that beauty, I realized the dawn was not in the sky, not in the rivers, not in the garden. The dawn was here, within me. The eternal light was not something to chase or anticipate. It was the underlying presence of life itself, steady, luminous, and unbroken, waiting for recognition. I sat down, legs folded, lantern beside me, and let the sun's warmth touch my skin. I felt a stirring deep in my chest, a gentle expansion that seemed to ripple outward through my entire body. Every inhalation brought clarity, every exhalation released what no longer served me. Memories, regrets, doubts, and fears rose like fog in the morning air, but I did not resist them. I allowed them to drift through me, knowing that in their passing, I would glimpse the eternal light beyond the dawn that has no end. As the hours passed, I observed the world with unbroken attention. A hawk glided effortlessly above the mountains. A river sparkled far below, and the garden's leaves shimmered with the subtle movements of the wind. Each detail, once separate and mundane, now appeared to pulse with the same life, the same eternal rhythm. I understood that the eternal dawn was not confined to any object or scene. It was the awareness itself, the witnessing presence that made all things vivid, harmonious, and alive in that stillness. I began to hear a subtle music, not from instruments, not from birds or rivers, but from the space between sounds, from the quiet hum of being itself. The melody was gentle yet immense, ancient yet endlessly new. I felt it resonate within every cell, every thought, every breath. It was as if life itself were singing softly, reminding me that I was both observer and participant, both finite and infinite, a single note in an eternal symphony. I spent days on the terrace, sometimes in silence, sometimes walking slowly along the stone pathways, carrying my lantern even in broad daylight. The flames seemed less a guide and more a reflection, flickering in rhythm with the eternal dawn within me. I noticed how the simplest actions, pouring water, brushing leaves from a path, folding robes, could become profound acts of mindfulness, each infused with awareness of the ongoing light that underlies everything. Even the passage of clouds, the flight of birds, the rise and fall of wind, all became expressions of the same eternal presence. One evening, as twilight approached, I saw the sun dip behind the distant peaks. Shadows stretched across the valleys, merging with the gentle darkness. I felt a familiar apprehension, the same that had once filled me before I discovered stillness. Yet now I perceived the dark not as absence, but as part of the eternal cycle. Light and shadow, joy and sorrow, presence and absence, they were all expressions of the same continuous dawn. I realized that the eternal light does not disappear when night falls. It merely shifts, waiting to be recognized in the next breath, the next thought, the next heartbeat. Night after night, I meditated beneath the stars. The lantern flickered softly beside me, but the flames seemed less essential than before. I understood that the true illumination comes from recognition, from being present with what is, the inner lantern, the flowing river, the patient stone, the garden of letting go. All of these had been teachers guiding me to this understanding. And now, the eternal dawn was the culmination. Not a distant goal, but a living reality I could touch in each breath. Sometimes, travelers or villagers would visit the temple and ask how I had found peace. I would smile, thinking of rivers, stones, lanterns, and gardens, and then speak simply. The dawn is always here. It waits for no one and belongs to everyone. All we must do is open our awareness and let it fill us. Many did not understand. Yet, I knew that even these words carried a hint of the truth that the eternal light is not something taught, only glimpsed and recognized one morning. A soft mist rolled over the mountains as I sat by the river near the temple. The sunlight filtered through, scattering silver patterns across the water. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and felt the eternal dawn within me, steady, luminous, unbroken. I understood fully that life is a continuous unfolding, an endless sequence of beginnings, endings, and awakenings. The river flows, the stone endures, the lantern glows, the garden transforms. And through it all, the eternal dawn remains, waiting, radiant, ever present. I reflected on all that I had learned, the calm of stillness, the lessons of flow, the light within, the power of release, and now the continuity of awareness that underlies all. Each teaching had been a doorway, each moment a stepping stone, and now the path itself seemed to vanish, leaving only presence, pure and luminous. I felt a quiet joy, a gentle warmth, a soft humming of life that needed no words, no labels, no accomplishments. It simply was, and I simply was, as the days blended into weeks. I continued to carry my lantern, tending the garden, walking by the river, observing the stones and meditating under the sky. Yet I no longer sought anything. There was nothing to chase, nothing to fear. The eternal dawn had always been within me, and I had finally come to recognize it. Every breath, every movement, every heartbeat became a celebration of this presence, a gentle, infinite awakening that neither begins nor ends. Even as years passed, I noticed subtle shifts, the petals of flowers, the bend of bamboo, the subtle changes in my own heart and mind. Yet the dawn remained constant, luminous, patient. It was in the laughter of others, the songs of birds, the silent glow of the moon, the soft touch of wind against my skin. It was the unbroken thread that tied together all experiences, all teachers, all moments. And I, too, was a thread in that tapestry. A note in the eternal melody, a witness to the infinite unfolding of life. In my final moments of solitude each day, as I watched the sun rise over the mountains or set behind them, I felt the eternal dawn in its fullest sense, not as light or color, not as time or space, but as the boundless presence in which all things arise and dissolve. And in that awareness, I knew an unshakable truth. The eternal dawn is not something to be found, earned, or carried. It simply is. It is life itself, radiant, limitless, and always present, and we are always a part of it. I close my eyes and feel the gentle weight of the day lifting off my shoulders. The room around me fades into a soft haze, as though the walls themselves are exhaling, allowing space for a quiet to settle. I take a slow, deliberate breath, inhaling the cool stillness that fills the air. The rhythm of my breathing becomes my anchor, drawing me into the present moment, guiding me away from the restless chatter of my mind. I feel the rise and fall of my chest, the subtle flutter of my heartbeat, and for the first time today, I am aware of the simple act of being outside. The wind whispers through the bamboo grove that borders my small dwelling. Its voice is gentle, neither demanding nor commanding, simply moving, flowing, reminding me of the impermanence of all things. I imagine the sound as a soft brush across my spirit, clearing away layers of worry and fatigue. Each sigh of the wind carries a lesson I cannot yet name, yet it resonates deep within, as though my soul remembers it from somewhere long ago. I am here and I am listening. I rise slowly, letting my feet touch the wooden floor, grounding myself with the sensation of the cool, smooth planks beneath me. My hands brush lightly over the grain, feeling the subtle ridges, the natural imperfections that tell stories of time and care. I bow my head slightly, a small gesture of acknowledgement to the quiet energy that fills this space. There is a rhythm to it, a subtle harmony that exists without effort, teaching me that peace does not always arrive with grand proclamations. It often comes softly, like a shadow in the corner of a room, unnoticed yet profoundly present. I step outside, and the morning light greets me with delicate warmth. It is not harsh. It does not demand attention. Instead, it caresses the world in golden whispers, making the leaves glimmer as though they were stitched from sunlight itself. The garden is alive with muted sound, the gentle hum of insects, the occasional rustle of small creatures moving through underbrush, the distant call of a bird. I breathe it in, feeling my lungs expand, absorbing not just air, but a deep sense of belonging. I am part of this world in a way that feels natural, effortless, and complete. I walk slowly along the path that winds through the garden, letting each step be conscious, deliberate, a meditation in motion. My toes press into the soft earth, leaving behind fleeting impressions that will soon vanish, just as all traces of our presence do. I am reminded that life is a series of these small, impermanent marks, and yet each holds meaning in the moment it exists. With every step, I release fragments of tension, thoughts that have clung to me through the night and the day, letting them dissolve into the soil beneath me. I pause near the pond, its surface still and reflective. The water mirrors the sky, clouds drifting lazily across its face, and I see my own reflection staring back. There is no judgment in this gaze, no expectation, just the quiet acknowledgement of what is. I notice the lines etched upon my face, the subtle shifts in expression, and I smile softly at myself. I am here, alive, breathing, and the world around me is breathing with me. The pond does not rush, does not demand. It simply exists, and in its existence, I find a gentle encouragement to do the same. I sit on the edge of the stone path, letting my knees bend, my hands rest lightly on my lap. I close my eyes again, and the sounds of the garden weave into a soothing tapestry. The wind rustles the leaves in playful murmurs. The water laps quietly against the stones, and distant birds contribute soft notes to the symphony of stillness. I feel as though the universe itself is exhaling through me, and I allow my body to soften, to release every small tension, every fragment of worry or anticipation. There is nothing to fix, nothing to chase, only this moment, infinite and complete. As I settle deeper into the calm, I become aware of my thoughts drifting by like clouds passing over a wide open sky. I do not cling to them. I do not push them away. I watch them, acknowledging each one before it dissolves into nothingness. Memories of the day, moments of joy, whispers of regret, they all float past with equal grace. I am not the keeper of these thoughts. I am the witness, the observer, the quiet space in which all things appear and disappear. There is a freedom in this witnessing, a gentle liberation that feels like the first deep breath after a long journey. A soft fragrance rises from the garden jasmine and fresh rain lingering on the soil. I inhale slowly, letting the scent guide me inward, a reminder that the senses themselves can be gateways to presence. I feel the warmth of sunlight on my skin, the gentle breeze on my face, the subtle pressure of the earth beneath me. Every sensation grounds me, draws me further into this moment of stillness, where nothing is needed beyond simply being. I let myself linger here, suspended between the world and the self, aware of the quiet rhythm of life that pulses beneath everything. Time loses its urgency. Minutes stretch like soft threads of silk, weaving a tapestry of serenity. My mind, once cluttered with noise and distraction, has softened, and in that softening, I discover a depth of peace I had not known I was seeking. It is not the absence of challenge or worry, but the presence of acceptance, the gentle acknowledgement of what is, just as it is, as the sun rises higher, casting a warm glow over the garden. I feel a quiet gratitude welling within me, for this moment, for this breath, for the simple miracle of being alive and aware. I bow my head, once more acknowledging the harmony that surrounds me, and I feel a gentle resolve to carry this calm with me, like a lantern held carefully in my hands. No matter where the day may take me, I know this stillness resides within, a sanctuary I can return to at any time. I remain seated by the pond, watching the water shimmer in golden light, feeling the steady rhythm of my own heart, knowing that this calm is not fleeting. It is a part of me, waiting, patient, enduring. And as I close my eyes once more, allowing the world to blur into gentle shadows, I am ready to drift deeper into the quiet, to let the wisdom of stillness guide me into sleep and to awaken renewed, carrying the serenity of this moment within me always. I step softly onto the moss-covered path, that winds deeper into the forest. Each footfall presses into the soft earth, leaving an impression that'll soon fade, yet I am aware of it fully. Honoring the gentle connection between myself and the living world beneath me. The air is cool, tinged with the scent of damp soil and fallen leaves, carrying the faint perfume of pine and wildflowers. I inhale deeply, letting the richness of the forest fill my lungs, feeling it mingle with my own breath in a quiet, sacred rhythm. The trees rise like ancient sentinels, their branches intertwine high above, forming a delicate canopy that filters the sunlight into shards of gold and green. I follow the dappled light as it dances on the forest floor, mesmerized by the play of shadow and illumination. I feel a soft energy in the air, a subtle pulse that seems to originate not from the trees themselves, but from the space between them. The invisible flow that links every living thing. I sense that I am part of this current, moving with it effortlessly. A leaf floating upon the gentle stream of existence. A small brook meanders nearby, its waters clear and melodic. I kneel by its edge, letting my fingers graze the surface. The water is cool, brushing against my skin like the tender caress of a long-lost friend. Tiny ripples spread outward, catching the light, breaking and reforming in endless patterns. I watch them, captivated by their effortless dance, and I realize that life, too, moves in this way, constantly shifting, changing, yet always whole. I feel my thoughts soften as I listen to the gentle murmur of the water, letting the current carry away fragments of tension I had held tightly for far too long. Birdsong threads through the air, delicate and unpredictable, weaving a melody that is both ancient and immediate. Each note rises and falls, echoing in the hollow spaces of the forest, filling them with invisible warmth. I close my eyes and let the song seep into me, feeling it resonate in my chest, my shoulders, even in the tips of my fingers. It is as though the birds are speaking directly to the part of me that longs for simplicity, reminding me that even the smallest voices carry profound wisdom when we truly listen. I continue along the path, noticing the subtle details, the curl of a fern unfurling, a spider's web glistening with dew, the quiet tremor of a leaf as a squirrel leaps from branch to branch. Each motion, each sound is a reminder of life's gentle intricacy. I let my attention linger on these small wonders, allowing them to draw me fully into the present. There is no hurry here, no destination to reach. The forest itself is a teacher, instructing me in the art of patience, in the delicate balance of observation and acceptance. Sunlight filters through the canopy in long, soft beams, illuminating the moss and lichen that cling to stones and tree trunks. I sit on a fallen log, letting the warmth of the light touch my face. I am part of it, yet I am separate, a witness and participant simultaneously. The wind moves gently through the leaves above, a chorus of whispers that beckons me to let go of any lingering doubts or worries. I exhale slowly, sensing the tension leave my body in waves, carried off like fallen petals on a gentle stream. As I walk further, I come across a small clearing. The sunlight here is softer, warmer, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. I sit cross-legged on the soft grass, letting my hands rest on my knees, palms open to the earth. I close my eyes, feeling the subtle vibration of life beneath me, the hum of insects, the gentle pulse of the soil, the distant call of a woodpecker tapping rhythmically on a trunk. Every sensation, every sound becomes a thread in the tapestry of my awareness, binding me more intimately to the living world around me. The wind shifts, bringing with it the scent of wild mint and damp pine needles. I inhale, letting it fill every corner of my being, and I sense my mind becoming quieter, more fluid. Thoughts drift by like clouds on a vast sky, soft and ungraspable. I am not seeking to hold them. I watch them, acknowledge them, and let them continue on their way. There is no need to control, no need to fix. I am learning with each breath that the flow of nature is a reflection of the flow within myself, a current of gentle motion, patient, enduring, and yet always alive. A butterfly flutters past, its wings brushing the air like whispers of color. I follow its path with my eyes, noticing the delicate patterns that seem almost impossibly intricate. It lands briefly on a flower nearby, pausing as if aware of the perfection in that fleeting moment. I smile softly, understanding that life is composed of these tiny, luminous instants, each one complete, each one deserving attention. I feel my own awareness deepen, aligning with the subtle movements of the world around me, synchronized with the heartbeat of the earth itself. I continue walking, letting the brook guide my steps. Its gentle babble becomes a mantra, a soothing rhythm that matches my own breathing. I notice the sunlight glinting on its surface, creating fleeting prisms of color that shift with the water's flow. Each reflection seems like a small revelation, a reminder that beauty is never static, never fixed, but always emerging, always transforming. I let the sensation fill me, letting it settle deep into my being, a quiet joy that does not need words or explanation. As the afternoon unfolds, I pause once more, leaning against a sturdy tree trunk. I feel the rough bark beneath my hand, solid and grounding. I sense the history embedded in its rings, the years of growth, the seasons weathered, the storms endured. It reminds me that life is a series of cycles, each one carrying its own lessons, each one a testament to resilience. I rest here, allowing the forest to teach me once again the wisdom of patience, the beauty of slow, deliberate growth. The sun begins its gentle descent, casting longer shadows that stretch across the forest floor. I sit quietly, letting the transition of light remind me of the impermanence of all things. Just as the day softens into evening, so too does every moment arrive and depart, leaving behind only the memory of its presence. I exhale, feeling the weight of time lighten, and I smile softly at the thought that I am part of this endless flow. Neither clinging nor resisting, simply moving with the current. I remain seated in the clearing, my breath deep and steady, attuned to the rhythm of the forest. Every rustle, every chirp, every whisper of wind feels like an invitation to surrender, to let go of effort, to simply be. I sense my heart aligning with the pulse of life around me, my thoughts drifting freely like leaves on the brook. In this moment, I understand that the flow of nature is also the flow of the mind when it is unburdened, faultless, gentle, and endlessly renewing as twilight approaches. I rise slowly, feeling a deep, serene satisfaction. The forest has become more than a place. It's a teacher, a mirror, a sanctuary. I walk back along the path I came, letting each step echo the lessons I have absorbed. I am aware of my own breath, the soft crunch of moss beneath my feet, the last golden rays of light touching the leaves. The flow of nature moves within me now, and I carry it with me. A quiet river of peace, ready to guide me into the stillness of night and the gentle embrace of sleep. I walk slowly along the winding path, feeling the forest behind me fade into a gentle hush. The sunlight dims as I step beneath a thicker canopy, and a subtle coolness settles around me like a soft cloak. My breath is steady, measured, and I notice how each inhalation seems to illuminate something hidden within me. A quiet flicker that has always been there, but often goes unnoticed. I sense it now as a delicate lantern glowing softly in the center of my chest. A tiny warmth that does not demand attention, but simply exists, waiting to guide me. I pause, closing my eyes, and let the presence of this inner light expand with each breath. I imagine it as a small, golden flame, fragile yet enduring, casting gentle illumination over the shadowed corners of my mind. Thoughts arise, as they always do, anxieties, fleeting judgments, regrets from earlier in the day. I do not push them away. I hold my inner lantern steady, allowing its warmth to touch these thoughts without fear, without resistance. Each flicker of light seems to remind me that even in darkness, there is always a source of clarity, quiet, and guidance within me. I continue walking, letting the rhythm of my footsteps match the rhythm of my breath. The path is soft underfoot, covered in fallen leaves that cushion each step, muffling the sound of my movement. I feel the connection between the earth beneath me and the flame within me, a subtle vibration that hums in harmony. I realize that the lantern is not merely a metaphor, it is the living essence of attention, awareness, and presence. It does not illuminate the path in front of me outwardly, but it shines inwardly, revealing the landscapes of my own mind with gentle understanding. A soft breeze brushes against my face, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. I inhale slowly, letting it mingle with the warmth of my lantern, imagining the flame responding to the touch of air, dancing with a quiet grace. The movement is mesmerizing, almost hypnotic, and I feel my mind softening further, relaxing into the simplicity of presence. The concerns of the outside world begin to fade, carried away like dry leaves floating on a river. I am aware only of this light, this warmth, and the steady flow of breath that sustains it. I pause by a small clearing where the sunlight filters in soft, scattered rays, and I kneel to rest my hands on the grass. I feel the gentle pressure of the earth beneath me, grounding me, reminding me of the interconnectedness of all life. The lantern within me grows slightly brighter, not with force, but with recognition, a quiet affirmation of the present moment. I sense that this inner glow is patient and impartial, neither judging nor praising, simply witnessing, gently illuminating the essence of who I am. As I sit quietly, I notice the subtle sounds of life around me, the faint rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the tiny skittering of a forest creature through underbrush. Each sound seems to echo inside me, resonating with the warmth of my lantern. I realize that this inner flame is not separate from the world. It is a reflection of the subtle currents of life that flow through everything. Just as the brook glimmers under sunlight, my inner lantern responds to the subtle energies of awareness, illuminating the quiet beauty that often goes unnoticed. I close my eyes and let my attention drift inward, following the gentle radiance of my lantern deeper. I feel it extending warmth to every corner of my being, the tightness in my shoulders, the tension in my jaw, the subtle unease I sometimes carry in my stomach. I breathe into these spaces, letting the light dissolve tension effortlessly. There is no hurry, no expectation. I am not trying to change anything. I am simply allowing the presence of this quiet light to guide me, to remind me that peace exists not in the absence of challenges, but in the recognition of the inner resources that are always present. The deeper I sink into this awareness. The more I notice the interplay between light and shadow. Some thoughts are dark, dense, reluctant to shift, yet the lantern does not push them away. Instead, it illuminates them gently, allowing me to see without fear, to understand without resistance. I feel a profound sense of liberation in this approach, a freedom that arises when I stop struggling and simply witness. Each flicker of the inner lantern becomes a meditation, a moment of quiet insight into the nature of impermanence, acceptance, and presence. A bird lands nearby, its wings brushing the air softly, and I watch its delicate movements with detached curiosity. Its presence reminds me that life is composed of countless small interactions, each significant in its own quiet way. I feel my inner lantern pulse in response, a gentle acknowledgement of this interconnectedness. I sense the same light reflected in the gentle sway of the branches, in the glimmering surface of a nearby puddle, in the rhythm of my own heartbeat. All is luminous when observed through the lens of attention, and I allow this realization to settle deeply into my awareness. Oh, time seems to dissolve as I sit quietly, my lantern glowing steadily, unaffected by the shifting light of the day outside. I feel an inner expansion, as though the flame has spread warmth throughout my entire being. My thoughts continue to appear and fade, yet I am no longer bound by them. I am not my thoughts. I am the observer, the witness, the quiet presence that holds them without judgment. The lantern within me shines not just on my mind, but on my soul, revealing the gentle constancy that exists beneath life's turbulence. I take a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the light extend to my fingertips, my toes, every cell of my body. I imagine it radiating outward, connecting me to the subtle currents of the world, the wind brushing against the leaves, the soil's quiet heartbeat, the distant rustle of life in the forest. Each element responds to the awareness I carry, each moment amplified by the simple act of mindful attention. The lantern is steady, unwavering, a constant reminder that clarity and calm exist not in the future or past, but here and now, within my own presence. As the shadows lengthen and the forest begins to take on a deeper, velvety quiet, I rise slowly, feeling the gentle weight of this awareness with me. I walk along the path, the lantern glowing softly within, illuminating not the way forward, but the depth of understanding within myself. I sense that even when I return to the world beyond this forest, this light will remain a subtle, steady flame, reminding me that no matter where life takes me, I can always find guidance, peace, and clarity by returning inward to the sanctuary that exists within. I pause once more, closing my eyes, letting the warmth of my inner lantern envelop me fully. I am aware of the gentle rhythm of my breath, the soft touch of air on my skin, and the quiet hum of life around me. I am present, I am steady, and I am held by the light within a guiding flame that requires nothing, demands nothing, yet gives everything: clarity, calm, and an enduring sense of home. I allow myself to linger here in this quiet radiance, knowing that it will lead me gently into the night, into rest, and into the depths of serene sleep. I step into a quiet garden hidden deep within the forest, a place I have discovered only in fleeting moments of stillness. The air is fragrant with the scent of blooming jasmine and wet earth, a gentle sweetness that seems to settle over my mind, as well as the landscape. Every blade of grass, every petal, every ripple of sunlight through the leaves feels deliberate, as though the universe itself has paused to create this sanctuary. I feel a subtle invitation here, not to accomplish, not to analyze, but simply to release. The garden stretches before me, a tapestry of soft greens, muted yellows, and delicate pinks. I walk slowly along the stone path, feeling each step absorb into the earth, a rhythm that begins to mirror the beat of my own heart. I notice how the light shifts with the sway of branches, creating patterns that ripple across the ground like gentle waves. Each shift, each flicker of shadow reminds me of the impermanence of everything, of how nothing remains unchanged. Yet each moment holds its own perfection. I come to a small fountain at the center of the garden, its waters flowing in a steady, tranquil rhythm. I sit by its edge, letting my fingers trail in the cool, clear water. Tiny ripples radiate outward, spreading across the surface in patterns I cannot predict or control. I smile softly, realizing that this is the essence of letting go, the gentle surrender to the flow. The acceptance that some things cannot be held or forced. My mind, often so cluttered with desire and expectation, begins to soften in the presence of this quiet, unyielding movement. I close my eyes, feeling the warmth of sunlight on my face and the gentle caress of the breeze on my skin. Memories drift up like autumn leaves, small moments of tension, regrets, or unfinished thoughts. I acknowledge each one without judgment and imagine placing them into the flowing water, letting them be carried away. Some resist, clinging stubbornly, but the water's rhythm is patient. I release my grip, allowing the garden, the fountain, the very air around me to do what I cannot transform, what has been held too tightly into stillness, into nothingness. The flowers sway gently as a soft wind passes through the garden, brushing against my shoulders, my arms, my hair. I feel as though the world itself is offering encouragement to let go, to open my hands and my heart, to release the weight I have carried too long. I inhale slowly, imagining my breath as a gentle exhalation of every lingering worry. Each thought of what if or if only. With each breath, I feel lighter, freer, more in tune with the quiet rhythm of life around me. A small bird lands on the rim of the fountain, its delicate claws resting on the smooth stone. It gazes at the water, then hops closer, pecking gently at the surface. I watch it with soft attention, marveling at its simplicity, its presence without agenda or expectation. I realize that it embodies the very lesson I am learning here. Life is transient, beautiful, and best embraced without clinging. The bird flits away, and the water continues to ripple, unchanged. And yet, full of movement and life, I rise and walk along a winding path that leads deeper into the garden. Moss cushions my steps, softening each footfall, and I notice how the light shifts subtly through the leaves, illuminating tiny details I might otherwise overlook. A small stone with delicate carvings catches my eye. I run my fingers over its smooth surface, feeling the faint impressions of time. The carvings are not permanent. They are fading slowly, yet they retain a quiet beauty, a testament to the inevitability of change. I reflect on my own attachments, the thoughts and emotions I have held too tightly, and I feel a gentle willingness to release them. I stop by a grove of cherry trees, their branches heavy with blossoms. Petals drift lazily to the ground, carried by a whisper of wind. I watch them fall, one by one, and I feel my own burdens fall in parallel each worry, each regret, each unspoken word dissolving into the earth beneath me. I do not need to retrieve them. I do not need to analyze why they came. I only need to witness them, acknowledge them, and allow them to depart gracefully. The garden teaches me that letting go is not a loss, but a gentle liberation, a soft opening of space within myself where peace can grow. I sit beneath the cherry trees, leaning back against the rough bark of a sturdy trunk. I close my eyes and feel the sun warming my face, the air brushing against my skin, and the subtle hum of life all around me. The fountain continues its steady song. The flowers sway. The birds sing their delicate melodies. I feel a deep sense of interconnectedness, a quiet understanding that my inner world is not separate from the garden, from nature, from the flow of existence. To let go is to return to this harmony, to align with the effortless balance of life itself. Thoughts come and go, some lingering longer than others. Yet I watch them without grasping, without resisting. I imagine each one dissolving into the garden, carried off by the breeze or absorbed by the soil. Each exhale is a gentle surrender. Each inhale, a quiet acceptance of what remains. I sense my body growing lighter, my mind quieter, my heart more expansive. I am not empty, nor am I burdened. I simply am fully present, fully attuned to the rhythm of letting go. A butterfly lands on a nearby flower, its wings delicate and iridescent. I watch its small, purposeful movements, noticing the grace with which it interacts with the world. It reminds me that life flows in moments, that clinging is unnecessary, and that beauty is ever present when we allow it to be. I let my inner gaze soften, following the butterfly's movements with gentle attention. And I realize that letting go does not mean disengaging. It means participating fully while releasing the need to control, to possess, to define every moment. I rise once more, walking slowly along the winding paths of the garden. Each step is deliberate, a meditation in motion. I feel the sunlight fading softly as the afternoon moves toward evening, casting longer shadows across the flowers and trees. I sense that the act of letting go is not a single event, but a continuous practice, like the steady flow of the fountain, the falling of petals, the rhythm of the wind. It is gentle, patient, and ever present. A quiet teacher guiding me toward freedom within. I pause by the fountain again, placing my hands lightly on its rim. I watch the ripples expand and dissolve, realizing that my own thoughts, my own attachments, are much the same. They come, they linger briefly, and they are carried away. I feel a serene acceptance, a gentle gratitude for the lessons I have absorbed. And I bow my head slightly in acknowledgement of the garden, the flowing water, and the lantern of awareness that has guided me here. I remain in the garden as the sun sinks lower, letting its final rays warm my face. I feel a deep sense of peace settling over me, a quiet joy that comes not from having or achieving, from releasing, from trusting the flow, from letting go. I know that this practice is mine to carry beyond the garden, into the world beyond these trees, into the quiet spaces of my daily life. I inhale deeply, exhale fully, and allow myself to merge with a gentle rhythm of existence, carrying the calm, the clarity, and the freedom of letting go within me as I move into the approaching night. I awake softly to the first hints of morning light filtering through the curtains, a delicate glow that touches the edges of the room like a gentle whisper. My breath is slow, deep, and steady, as if the rhythm of night itself lingers within me. I stretch my arms, feeling the subtle awakening of muscles that have rested and softened. And I notice the quiet strength that remains in stillness. The world outside is beginning to stir. Yet here within, there is a profound sense of calm, a lingering serenity that feels both timeless and immediate. I rise slowly, feet brushing against the floor, grounding me in the present moment. The light grows warmer as I move toward the window, spilling over the garden that I have come to know so intimately in my dreams and meditations. Dew clings to each blade of grass, sparkling in the soft rays like tiny lanterns scattered across the earth. I breathe in the fresh morning air, tasting the subtle sweetness of flowers and soil, feeling it mingle with the warmth of the inner lantern I have carried through the night. The world seems to hold its breath as the sun ascends, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. I notice the birds beginning their morning songs, delicate notes that weave into the silence I have nurtured within myself. I pause, listening with full attention, allowing each sound to ripple through me, awakening a quiet joy that does not rush, that does not demand. The garden, the forest, the flowing water of my imagination, they are all alive in this moment, and I feel connected to each, a part of the eternal rhythm of dawn. I step outside into the soft embrace of morning. The air is cool against my skin, yet warm with the promise of day. The flowers sway gently, petals brushing one another like whispered greetings. I walk slowly, letting each step be deliberate, conscious, a meditation in motion. My inner lantern glows faintly, harmonizing with the sunlight, and I feel a deep sense of continuity between rest and awakening, between self and the world. Each breath I take is a bridge, connecting the stillness of night to the unfolding possibilities of the morning. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves overhead, carrying the faint scent of jasmine and pine. I close my eyes for a moment, letting the sensations fill every corner of my being. I feel the rhythm of life pulsing subtly beneath my awareness, the heartbeat of the earth, the soft murmur of insects, the flutter of distant wings. I sense that the eternal dawn is not simply the rising of the sun, but the awakening of awareness, the recognition that each moment, no matter how fleeting, holds the possibility of light, of peace, of clarity. I find a smooth stone by the edge of the pond and sit, legs crossed, hands resting lightly on my knees. The water reflects the sky, clouds drifting lazily across its surface. I watch the ripples from a passing breeze, seeing the reflections dance and shift. A reminder that life is never static, never perfectly predictable. I feel a subtle expansion within me, a sense of alignment with the flow of existence. I am both observer and participant, witness in creation and in this awareness. The eternal dawn reveals its quiet power, the power of presence, of acceptance, and of gentle awakening. As I sit in the garden, I notice the soft shimmer of sunlight across the leaves. The intricate veins of each blade highlighted in gold. I feel my mind mirror this delicacy, thoughts moving lightly, gracefully, without weight or burden. Each inhalation nourishes this awareness. Each exhalation releases tension I had carried unknowingly. I sense that this is the essence of dawn, simply a beginning in time, but a renewal of consciousness, a chance to meet life freshly, with clarity, compassion, and calm. That the garden comes alive with subtle motion. A bird hops along the edge of the pond. A butterfly drifts from flower to flower. A small rabbit scuttles through the underbrush. I observe each with gentle attention, feeling a kinship with the effortless grace of their being. There is no struggle here, no need for control, only the quiet unfolding of life. And I realize that I too can exist in this way, attentive, receptive, present, and free from the weight of expectation. I take a slow, deep breath, feeling the warmth of sunlight on my face, the gentle breeze brushing my skin, and the quiet pulse of life beneath me. I feel the inner lantern within, glowing softly, harmonizing with the eternal light of dawn. It is a gentle reminder that peace, clarity, and insight are not destinations to be reached, but qualities already present within me, waiting to be recognized and nurtured. I smile softly, allowing the serenity to fill every part of my being, carrying me fully into the day that awaits. The water of the pond shimmers as a dragonfly skims its surface, creating delicate ripples that spread outward endlessly. I watch, entranced, understanding that life moves in subtle patterns, often unnoticed, yet profoundly meaningful. My thoughts are quiet now, each one acknowledged and allowed to drift away like the ripples themselves. I feel a deep sense of liberation in this simplicity, a knowledge that to live fully is to flow gently, to release, to embrace, and to awaken continuously. I rise slowly, feeling the earth firm beneath my feet, and take a measured walk along the stone path. The light grows brighter, yet soft and forgiving, as though the world itself is welcoming me into its embrace. I feel a harmonious alignment between my inner world and the outer, a balance that is tender, patient, and enduring. Every step I take is both movement and meditation, each breath a quiet celebration of the eternal dawn that resides both within and beyond me. As the morning unfolds fully, I pause again by the pond, closing my eyes and letting the warmth of the sun and the glow of my inner lantern merge. I feel a profound gratitude for this moment, for the journey of night into day, for the lessons of letting go, presence, and awareness that have guided me here. I sense a gentle, enduring peace, a deep certainty that no matter the challenges or distractions of life, this calm, this light, this eternal dawn remains accessible, waiting quietly within me, always I inhale slowly, exhaling fully, letting the serenity of the garden, the rhythm of nature, and the steady glow of my inner lantern fill me completely. I feel ready, not just for the day, but for life itself, present, attentive, and at peace. I carry the light of the eternal dawn within me, a subtle flame that requires nothing, yet illuminates everything. And as I walk slowly back along the garden path, I feel the profound simplicity of being fully awake, fully aware, and fully alive, ready to meet each moment with calm, clarity, and quiet joy.